All right, guys, this is chapter 10, section 4, applications, which of course you know that means word problems, unfortunately, but we will get through it. All right, so our objectives in section 4 is we're going to solve applied problems using the quadratic equation. Oh, that was it. That's our only objective. Good deal. All right, so the first one starts out with a rectangle. So it says a rectangle, so I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture of a rectangle. Ooh, my lines are not that straight. It's all right. Ooh, look at that. That does not look like a rectangle. It's okay. All right, so it says it has a length of 12 meters less than 2 times the width. So with a lot of problems we've done with rectangles, we don't know a lot about the width, so we'll call it W. But we know something about the length. The length is 12 less than twice this W. So how do you do twice W? 2W, and then 12 less than is minus 12. And then it goes on and it tells us the area of this rectangle. So how do you find the area? You multiply the length times the width. So the width is W, the length is 2W minus 12. And we know in this situation, our area is 2,574 cubic meters. So, or I should say square meters actually. All right, so we're going to use the distributive property. So 2W times W is 2W squared. W times negative 12 is negative 12W equals 2,574. And then this is a quadratic equation, so we want it to equal 0. So we're going to subtract 2,574 from the left side. We're going to subtract it. 12W, so we're subtracting it minus 2,574 is equal to 0. All right, so since this is a quadratic equation, we're going to use the quadratic formula, which is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to plug in our correct numbers for a, b, and c. So the opposite of b, so b is negative 12, so the opposite of 12 is positive 12, plus and minus. Negative 12 squared, I know that negative 12 squared is 144, minus 4 times a times c. And all of that is over 2 times a, so 2 times 2 is 4. So in my calculator, I'm simply typing in to start with what's under the radical. So the radicand, so I'm typing in 144 minus 4 times 2 times negative 2,574. And my answer is 20,736. Now, on almost all of these, now I'm going to say this, and then the first example is probably not going to be correct. Almost all of these, you're going to get a perfect square under the radical. So let's see if this number is a perfect square. It is. The square root of this number is 144. Okay, so the square root of 20,736 is 144. So then we have two answers, of course, because it's a radical. I mean, it's a quadratic. All right, so our first answer is going to be 12 plus 144 divided by 12. I'm sorry, divided by 4, which is going to be the correct answer because the second answer is going to give us a negative number. Now, why can't we have negative numbers for word problems? Because this is about length and there's no way to have a negative length. So I'm going to add 12 plus 144 and I'm going to divide that number by 4 and I get 39. So this equation gives me 39. Now, just because I have it as a separate answer, I'm going to type in 12 minus 144. I get negative 132 divided by 4 is negative 33. And that answer we can throw out because it's a word problem. We're talking about our measurements, so we're not going to have a negative number. So that means we only have one correct answer. And so probably our width is 39, but we're going to double check our answer at the end and make sure it works. So if our width is 39, then our length has to be twice 39, but then 12 less than that. So 39 times 2 is 78, and 78 minus 12 is 66. Now that's the length, correct? So how am I going to double check to make sure these answers are correct? Well, it meets the first criteria. 66 is 12 less than twice 39. The second criteria is that if I have to multiply 66 and 39, and that means I have to get this answer. So if I get that answer when I multiply those numbers, I know for sure I'm right. And I checked it on the calculator, so I'm right. And the question was, what is the length? So make sure you understand the question that you're asked. Because if you say the answer is 39, that's not correct. That's the width. So the length is 66. Oh, man. Anyway, I'm glad I finished that before I discarded all of that. So the answer is 36. No, the answer is 66. Okay. I've got to get better with this pen, you guys. All right, good. I finished that before I messed up a whole bunch. Next question, a rectangular auditorium seats 2,790 people. So we have a rectangular auditorium. We have seats, 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 seats. And then we have rows of seats, right? The number of seats in each row exceeds the number of rows by 17. So I have this drawn backwards. The number of seats is going to be more than the number of rows. And these are seats. So it says the number of seats in each row exceeds the number of rows by 17. So we don't know how many rows there are, but we know that there are rows plus 17 number of seats, right? There's more seats than rows, so that's got to be the longest side. So anyway, you got to make sure you know what you're solving for, right? So the question is find the number of seats in each row. So our seats are going to exceed our rows. So this is basically another question, but it's basically asking you the area. It's just wording it different. So we don't know how many rows there are, but the thing we know about seats is that it's the number of rows plus 17. And we know that it can be filled with 2,790 people. So we're going to multiply r times r is r squared, 17r. We know we have to subtract 2,000 from both sides because we have to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in this one step. And then we're going to set our whole equation equal to 0. We got to know our quadratic equation. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So what's the opposite of our b? Our b is 17. So the opposite of 17, plus and minus the square root of 17 squared. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. Minus 4 times our a is 1. And our c is negative 2,790. And all of that over 2 times 1, which is 2. So I'm going to plug in what's under the radical first. So 17 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 2,790. And I got 11,449. Now I'm going to find the square root of that number. And the square root of that number is 107. Like I said, most of these are going to be perfect squares because you don't want to have 5.6 number of rows. That doesn't make sense. So we're going to have negative 17 plus 107 is going to be, that's a positive number, correct? Our other number would be a negative number because on the top we'd have a negative divided by a positive. So we know that we're going to throw this answer out because it's going to give us a negative answer. So all I'm worried about is the first one. So negative 17 plus 107 is 90, and half of 90 is 45. So it looks like we have 45. So since we were solving for R, it looks like we have 45 rows, and then we have 17 more seats than rows. So 45 plus 17 is 62. So the number of seats is 62. Before you put that in HOTS, double check it by doing what? We're going to multiply 62 times 45, and we want to make sure that equals 2,790, and it does. So the answer is there's 62 seats. Go, go, go. I'm trying to go to the next page. There we go. All right, find two positive numbers whose difference is 14 and whose product is 1,976. All right, so we have two numbers. Let's say we have A and B, and their difference is 14, and their product is, what does product mean? Product in math means we're going to multiply. So A times B is 1976. So this is a system of equations. We got two equations. So what are we going to do? Well, we can make this top one equal A by adding B to both sides, correct? Can we cancel out that B by adding B to both sides? So that means A is equal to 14 plus B. All right, so this is the value of A, and we're going to multiply A times B. Well, I'm going to turn it around and put B in the front. B times A, well, what is the value of A? A is 14 plus B. And together that equals 1,976. And guys, we could have solved for B by subtracting A, but then we'd have to divide everything by -1. So anyway, that's why I solved for A. Excuse me. So this line right here is what we're looking at. So we're going to use the distributive property. B times 14 is 14B, plus B times B is B squared. Oops, I forgot my equals. Equals 1976, and you know what we'll have to do with that toward the end. We'd have to pull it on this side of the equal sign. We'd have to subtract it from both sides. So we're going to have a negative 1976. That's a good year, by the way, 1976. I was 3 years old. Actually, today is my birthday. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Anyway, so I'm going to pull my B squared to the front. So B squared plus 14B. And then there's our negative 1976 because we subtracted it from this side. All right, and now that's a quadratic. And we could guess, right? We could think of two numbers. When I multiply them, I get 1976. And when I add them or subtract them, I get 14. But the quadratic equation will eliminate any guessing. All right, so, oh, I forgot to write it out. All right, so we have 146, no, yeah, excuse me, that's not 146, that's 14B. So our letter B is 14, so we're gonna do the opposite of 14, plus and minus. B squared, so 14 squared minus 4 times our 1 is letter A, and our C is negative 1976, all over 2 times A, which is 2. All right, so under my radical, I have 14 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1976. I get 8100. Square root of 8100 is 90. So we have negative 14 plus 90. Negative 14 plus 90 is going to give us a positive number, and we'll divide that by 2. However, negative 14 minus 90 would give us a negative number. So this is going to end up giving us a negative answer. But in word problems, we can't have negative numbers because you can't have negative. Well, this, even the problem, if you go back and look at the problem, it says to find 2 positive numbers. So we're just worried about negative 14 plus 90, and then divide that by 2, and we get 38. So one of our numbers is 38. Is that A or B? It's probably A, but how are we going to figure it out? How are we going to figure it out? We want to know what number times, if A is 38, what number times 38 is 1976? So 1976 divided by 38 is 52. I also want to make sure that so it ends up that 38 was B, because their differences has to be 14. Does that equal 14? Is that a true statement? 52 minus 38? Yes, it is 14. Okay, so you got to make sure, you know, 38 could have been the bigger number, but we found out it was the smaller of the 2 numbers because we divided, if we knew one of the numbers was 38, we divided 1976 by 38 to figure out what the other number was. And it says find 2 positive numbers. So our 2 positive numbers are 52 and 38. All right, that one was a little tricky, but we did it. All right, so here is your practice opportunity. So I encourage you to pause the video and try these on your own. And then of course I will do them for you. So see if you guys can get the right answers. All right, number 5, 2 positive numbers whose difference is 9. So any 2 variables, A minus B equals 9. Why am I subtracting? Because it tells us the difference. But then these 2 same numbers, their product means to multiply. A times B is 9, 10. I have 2 equations. I want to solve one of them for A or B. To solve for A, I would add B to both sides. So that's going to be the simpler one to figure out. So A is equal to 9 plus 6. So this is the value for A. So I'm going to plug 9 plus 6. No, what? Not 6. I'm a dork. 9 plus B, excuse me. Let's see, can I erase just this? Oh, I can, look at that. I'm learning, you guys, I'm learning. All right, 9 plus B, not 6, goofy. All right, so what is the value of A? It's 9 plus B. So I'm going to multiply B times 9 plus B. So I'm going to multiply B times the value of A, which is 9 plus B, and then let it equal 9, 10. So B times 9 is 9B plus B squared. And then we're going to end up subtracting 9, 10. So we can set this equation equal to 0. So remember, our A is always times the variable that's squared. So A is 1, B is 9, and C is negative 9, 10. So then we're going to have negative b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now the opposite of b is negative 9 plus and minus 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 910. Oh, Dookie. Let's see. There it is. Okay. All right. So, there we go. Sorry, guys. All over 2 times a. Oh, that's ugly. All right. So in my calculator, I'm going to type in what's under the radical. So I have 81 minus 4 times 1 times negative 910 is 3,721, and the square root of that big number is 61. So we have the only number that will work is negative 9 plus 61, which will give me a positive number divided by a positive number is a positive number. The other answer would give me a negative answer, but at the top it says find two positive numbers. So I'm just worried about this answer right here. So in my calculator, negative 9 plus 61 is 52, and half of 52 is 26. So one of my numbers is 26. What's my other number? Well, if one of the numbers is 26, 26 times what is 910? So I'm dividing in my calculator 910 divided by 26, and my answer is 35. So these two numbers have to have a difference of 9, and they do. And when I multiply 35 and 26, I have to make sure I get 910, because that's what this says. And we know it does. And so those are our two numbers, 35 and 26. All right, moving on. So you're going to have one that looks like just like mine. So a rectangular auditorium. A rectangular auditorium. Oh my gosh. Rectangular auditorium holds 1,080 people. The number of seats in each row exceeds the number of rows. So here's our seats this way, because it's the longest side. It exceeds the number of rows by 6. So our rows is, we don't know, but what do we know about the seats? There's 6 more seats than rows. So rows plus 6. And all together, if you filled up all the seats, we can fit 1,080 people in there, which is basically the same as finding the area of a rectangle. So we're going to multiply our number of rows by our number of seats. And we're going to get 1,080 people. So now r times r is r squared plus 6 times r is 6r equals 1080. We want this quadratic to equal 0. So we're going to subtract 1080 from both sides. And then we're going to use our quadratic formula. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So b is 6, so the opposite of 6 plus and minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1080, all of that over 2 times 1. So I'm going to find the square root of 36 minus 4 times 1 times negative 1080. The square root of that number is 66. So we're going to do negative 66 plus, negative 6 plus 66, which is positive 60, and half of positive 60 is 30. So one of our numbers is 30. Is it the bigger number or the smaller number? Which one's 30? Well, I know that 30 times the other number equals 1080. So I'm just going to divide 1080 by 30, and it's telling me the other number is 36, which means the number of seats is 36 and the number of rows is 30. And the question is, what's the number of seats in each row? The answer is 36. All right, I think this is our last one. It's the rectangle again. So we have a rectangle with a length and a width. So it always gives us information about the length, but not the width. So the width is unknown. The length is 25 meters less than 6 times the width. So 6 times W less 25. It tells us the area of the rectangle. So we're going to multiply the width times the length. And get a total of 261 square meters. So now we're going to use our distributive property. So 6W times W is 6W squared minus 25W equals 261. And then we want to get 261 on the left side of the equal sign. So 6W squared minus 25W minus 261 is equal to 0. So our A is 6, our B is negative 25, and our C is negative 261. We're going to use the quadratic formula. So we got negative B plus and minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So we plug our numbers in. The opposite of negative 25 is 25 plus and minus negative 25 squared, which is, I think, 625, minus 4 times 6 times negative 261, all over 2 times 6. Goodness, these are some big numbers. So in my calculator, I want to know the square root of 25 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 261. The square root of that number is 81. So we have 25 plus, no, I got 83, excuse me. Sorry about that. 25 plus 83 divided by 12 is going to give me a positive number. If I did 25 minus 83 divided by 12, I'm going to have a negative number. So I'm only worried about the first answer. So my calculator, 25 plus 83 divided by 12 is 9. So one of my answers is 9. That's probably the width. So what is 261 divided by 9? The other number is 29. 29. So which one's going to be bigger? So 6 times 9 minus 25. So the length is 29. The width is 9. And the length, which is the question, the length is 29. Make sure it fits this part of the problem since it's asking us for the width. Excuse me, the length. Is the length 6 times the width minus 25? Well, it is now. Yep. Alrighty, I think that was the last one, you guys. So the only other section that you have left for the whole class is 10.5. So I'll be sending you that in the next couple of days.